Hey everyone, it's your old buddy Uncle Matt, and it's time for another installment of Uncle Matt Stories. Now, normally we do these videos so that they come out at 5 o'clock Mountain Time on Sunday. But if you're in these United States, you know that today is a little bit of a special Sunday. In fact, some people might tell you it's the most important day of the year because it's Super Bowl Sunday. I have no illusions that I'm going to compete with the Super Bowl, so this video is coming out a little bit earlier than they normally do. However, it is a timely video because on Super Bowl Sunday, this Uncle Matt story is about one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and certainly one of the most overlooked guitar players of all time, Alan the Blind Owl Wilson. So we're going to call today's Uncle Matt story the Superb Owl Uncle Matt story, okay? Or we're going to call it Uncle Matt Stories, the Superb Owl. How about that? All right. So, as you know, with Uncle Matt Stories, there's always a story, right? So I remember it was Christmas Day, probably 1982 or 1983. And my mom's sister, my Aunt Jolene, invited me over to her place, and she said, Matt, this year for Christmas, I want to give you free reign to go through my record collection, and you can take. Let's see. There was a couple of caveats. One was that you couldn't take any of the Beatles stuff, and I want to say that since I didn't end up with any Rolling Stone stuff, she probably said you can't take any of the Beatles, you can't take any of the Stones, but I was free to go through my Aunt Jolene's record collection, and my Aunt Jolene had great taste in music. For example, my love for Bachman Turner Overdrive came from the copy of Not Fragile that I got from her on this day. Lots of Creedence Clearwater Revival. But remember, a lot of the time, this won't actually apply to everybody today, but back in the old days when music was recorded on vinyl, when you were a young guy and you didn't necessarily know what you wanted to listen to, sometimes the album cover spoke to you and you thought, oh, that's got to be cool. I want to get that. So when I had the ability to go through my aunt's album collection, and I had to kind of go, well, this looks neat. Fortunately for me, one of the things that I thought looked the neatest was all of her Canned Heat albums. So I took all of her, I already told you about all the other stuff that I took, and there was a bunch of other things too, but I took all of her Canned Heat albums. Boy, am I glad I did. Now, I listened to, Boogie with Canned Heat, and that was right about the time I was kind of getting into music in general, and, so like I would watch that Woodstock documentary, and of course, there's a Canned Heat song that's pretty much the official song for that Woodstock movie. But boy, Canned Heat was a big band for me, and stuff like Refried Boogie and Amphetamine Annie and that kind of thing. God, I loved that stuff. I loved it when Bob the Bear would say, everyone's gonna do their thing on this song, and man, I loved it. And so. I really got into the Blind Owl, Alan the Blind Owl Wilson. And it was much later in life that I kind of started to piece all these things together of maybe why the Blind Owl was so cool. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that I'm not going to be able to tell you guys anything you probably don't already know about the Blind Owl, but let's see, okay? So he was born on the 4th of July, a very American birthday to have. And he was this is a very unfortunate thing, not the founding member, but one of the founding members of the late 60s 27 Club. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's everybody who died when they were 27 years old. And Alan Wilson died, I think, right around the same time that Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin died. He was 27 years old. He died in September of 1970. So a couple months before I was even born. And so it's a cool thing for me to start to get into and dig a little deeper into the Blind Owl story. So of course, you know that what he's most remembered for is those songs with that haunting vocal style that he had, on the road again, and going up the country. Going up the country, of course, like I said, it's kind of the unofficial or maybe the official Woodstock song. But on the road again, man, that thing that speaks to me. And when you hear that, when you hear that song start up, and you hear Alan Wilson sing in his very signature voice, sounds a little bit like Skip James, but man, he comes out and he hits you hard with it, and the message is powerful. And I didn't know this, but apparently that was a B-side, and nobody had any illusions that it was going to be a big hit, but as it turns out, it was, and thank God that somebody I hear tell that there was a DJ somewhere in Texas who decided to flip that single over and play the B side. I don't even know what the A side was. Maybe like "Let's Work Together" or something. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But flipped the record over and played "On the Road Again," and man, it just took off. So. Alan, the Blind Al Wilson, studied music at Boston University. I think that's where he's from. They called him the Blind Al because he kind of looked a little bit like an owl, and he couldn't see. Some of the original members of Canned Heat gave him that name, and I forget who gave it to him. You guys probably already know though, so don't sweat it. But if you don't know and you want to know, you can look that one up. But he was instrumental in kind of bringing back blues music to some of the folk clubs, and he would let the blues musicians that would play at the folk clubs that when they come through Boston, he would let them stay at his apartment, and of course he would was a little bit awkward, maybe a lot awkward. He would, but gosh, what a great player! I guess I hear tell he had perfect pitch. He could play a song after hearing it just one time, and he could transcribe it. He studied music, like I said. One of the things that was particularly neat, that I think is a great Blind Owl story, is Son House was. A lot of people thought that Son House was dead in the mid '60s, and in fact, he wasn't. He was, but he just dropped out of the music scene. And as I understand it, Alan Wilson had to teach him how to play his songs again so that they could record an album, and so he did that. Later, he went on to do albums with, of course, lots of Canned Heat albums. He went on to do recordings with John Lee Hooker, and I think that the Hooker and Heat album is definitely a great album. He doesn't play guitar very much, if at all, on that album. He plays harmonica. Because he, out of respect for, did I say Howlin' Wolf? No, John Lee Hooker. Yeah. So out of respect for John Lee Hooker, he didn't want to play guitar because I guess their styles were very similar. Okay. Anyway, like I said, in September, mid-September 1970, you guys can look up the dates. He was found dead in a sleeping bag about 50 feet from Bob the Bear's house. They were going on to a tour, and the rest of the band had got on the plane and were flying to the tour, and Alan Wilson was supposed to join him. I guess it wasn't a big deal. Everybody knew that he was kind of he was practically fairly well known for not getting on the plane with everybody else. And he died from an apparent overdose. A lot of people say that it was accidental. The coroner, L.A. coroner or whatever, the Topanga Canyon coroner, said that it was an accident. A lot of people say that it was a suicide. But it all means the same thing in the end, and that is that Alan Wilson, one of the most overlooked guitar players of the 20th century, shrugged off his mortal coil in September of 1970. And the world is a little bit worse of a place for not having the superb owl, the blind owl, Alan Wilson. So if you're going to watch the Super Bowl later today, I urge you to listen to a little bit of Canned Heat first. And I'm going to listen to some Canned Heat. Lord knows I love Canned Heat, not just for the blind owl, but especially because of the blind owl. So this is your old buddy Uncle Matt reminding you that if you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel. That's what I did. Guys, we'll see you next time. Have a great week, everybody.